Hello and welcome to High Caliber TV, your source for figure and model updates every Wednesday and Friday. So today on the workbench, I'm going to be doing the follow-on video from Monday's video, where we applied the texturing to the mud wall and the stones and all that sort of stuff. Here you can see a few layers have been applied already. The first, the light layer, is the primer. I used Vallejo primer. I believe it's called Desert Camouflage. Anyway, it's the tan one. And I will be using that also as the base coat. There's not really much need of applying a second layer of the identical color when the primer will suffice. And I highly recommend that you use primer on every subject, but especially on subjects where we had exposed wood, stone, then the milliput all over the place, and then on top of that we had the liquid green stuff. And while it would have been possible for me to just go straight to the acrylics and the enamels, on top of all those surfaces, having a primer allows them all. It doesn't make it so that you have those crossover sections where the paint further down the line in the project process could rub off or chip off or things like that, which just is quite the pain when you get that far, especially since applying 2 coats of primer at the start is just a really quick and efficient way of doing things. It saves you a lot of headaches down the road. So the squiggles and the sort of the disruptive nature of it, that's the, I don't know if you'd call it counter shading, but it's the initial layer of acrylics that I applied. Of course, all Vallejo Model Air, since I was spray painting it, and in no particular form, especially on the ground here, you can see I just sort of blatted a few layers on, really thin though. And this is just gonna create variation for the successive layers, all of which I intend to have being exceedingly thin. And then on top of that we'll have pastels and some washes maybe. That being said, I'm probably going to shy away from oil washes on this, as I want everything to look bleached and really dry. The reference videos and photographs and things like that that I've been looking over, it's a desert and it's been out in the sun for a long time. These composite mud brick buildings, which this is supposed to be, look quite baked. So stick around and I will be showing the successive layers and where we go from here. So here we have the base with the successive layering completed. I'm going to show you the colors that I used, the mixes. I completely outed all the dark colors, so the black and the olive drab that were in the counter shading part were then omitted, and it was just left with these. Now, I've had some problems, or not necessarily a problem, just a weird reaction to the thinner that I use, which is just 70% isopropyl alcohol. And it's that the pigment separates from it sort of just changes the very nature of the paint in the mixing pot. I don't know why, and I only seem to have it with the tan colors, never with the greens or the blacks or the grays or the browns or anything like that. So I had to get it through the gun a bit faster. I didn't want it to dry in the gun, and I definitely didn't want it to spat out on the mud wall. There weren't really any specific tactics that I used on this. I, of course, sprayed down and at an angle to keep, as you can see, the variations alive and keep them unobstructed. The great thing about a subject like this is if there is sort of you can't nitpick it, because every mud wall has its own eccentricities and its own random nature. I doubt that Afghans clean or power wash their mud walls, and if there is a part, as with here, that I kept specifically untouched by the successive layers that looks a bit different, it just adds to the character of the wall. You can't look at it and say, why is that there? The answer is because it is there. The rocks down here, of course, have a lot more variation in them, just by the fact that I gave them a light touch with the highlight colors, and that allowed the previous darkness to remain. They'll be getting touched with the hand painting steps that are next and the pastels that come after. Yeah, so far so good. Stick around. So here it is, essentially 95% done. All that's left to do is do the final touch-ups by hand and then spray on the coat of clear flat to seal it all in. So I wanted to just point out a few little details here. The figures were all pinned through their feet with brass rod to the base. And here you can see there's discoloration on the stones. And here around his foot. Because those feet, when I put them down, the way that the earth sits and the sort of the variation of the groundwork, it made it so that their feet were actually a little bit floaty and they weren't necessarily fused to the base. They didn't look like they were heavy and grounded. So I just filled in the gap with a little bit of white carpenter glue and then added stones, just sprinkled them down, nothing particularly precise, and then waited for that to dry. Of course, cleared the excess stones away and then reprimed it by hand. So I'm just gonna add some pastels, do some hand touch-ups and stuff like that to blend the primer into the rest of the groundwork. I'm really happy with the way this turned out. I had actually considered using, like, hunting down an old school Verlinden, sort of like an Iraqi street corner wall, something like that. But then again, that's more time in the mail, and working with those, dare I say, ancient molds of especially things that are big like street corners can be problematic. But the way this turned out, I'm really pleased, gotta say. The figures came together quite well. I do like how there's sort of you can draw a line with the action and everything sort of flows really well. There's a very clear story, even though it's a very simple story. It does come out quite well. And there will be better pictures up online on Facebook, Pinterest, probably on Twitter as well. I'm not good enough with the camera to show off the detail, but here they are. Yeah. And the pastel work, I did a lot of streaking, if you can see. It's all blended in really, really well. I didn't want to leave any of the rain and weathering streaks to be particularly overt, so it's pretty subdued, but you can tell that there's variation in the wall. So thanks very much for watching. I hope this video wasn't too long. Thanks to all of our subscribers and all the people who leave messages and tell me what they're working on. I really do appreciate that sort of stuff. Yeah. Check us out at highcaliberminiatures.com. I do still get questions about what that is. We are a retailer online based in Canada, but we ship worldwide. We stock all these figures that you see here. All the figures that I show on YouTube, we stock, unless I say otherwise. And yeah, lots of great stuff. More stuff coming in. So be sure to check us out regularly on Facebook, Pinterest, and Twitter for stock updates, things like that, new stuff that's in the shop. And of course, workbench stuff like this that I'm putting together. I actually am planning, I did this particular vignette with the intention of taking it down to IPMS Seattle in April. So we'll see if it gets received well there. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.